So by the clock on my computer, it's 4 o'clock. So I would like to call this August 24th meeting of the Concord Select Board to order. The first item on our agenda this afternoon is the town accountant warrants and minutes to approve for July 27th and August 3rd.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Susan. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Okay. Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Thank you, and I note that it passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the town manager's update. Mr. Town Manager.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I did want to provide an update on the townhouse renovation project. I know we've received some correspondence about it over the last few days. And one of the things that I wanted to relay to the board was that, and a few members of the team are here and they're welcome to weigh in, but we had gone through a pretty lengthy planning process for that renovation project, not only the planning for the design, but also planning for the the execution of it, completing designs, going out to bid, opening bids, and getting ready for all that. And during that planning process, we worked collaboratively with the departments on the first floor. And I think at least at the time we made certain key decisions, there was a shared understanding that even though the project itself is complicated and there was, the election was coming up, that we thought we could, kind of accomplish both goals with, obviously preserving the successful conducting of the election being obviously the top priority in our planning process. So one of the things that, and I appreciate, I think that we received communication from League of Women Voters, and I want to thank them for raising the concern and also for their help in volunteering to make sure that the mail-in ballot application process has been going smoothly. That's something that has been, so basically since even early July, when we really started getting in the throes of planning, a lot has changed. I think the volume of work associated with the mail-in election and the associated new requirements from the Commonwealth were much more significant than I think we knew them. I mean, as someone says, we didn't know what we didn't know at the time, but we wanted to go through and at least bid the project out to see if our design and our funding, like I said, the project has been in the planning stages for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And so we wanted to make sure that our plans, which were really designed to improve employee and public safety, not only from a standpoint of having barriers for, the preservation of transactions, like there's a lot of financial transactions that happen in the first floor townhouse, but now with COVID-19, making sure that it was a public health issue as well. So we wanted to bid the project out and make sure that we were on point with that. And I think we did find out that after the bid process that we did have sufficient funds to move forward the project. In the midst of all that, like I said, the volume, it became apparent, and apparent to me, obviously later than certainly the clerk's office, that the volume of work associated with the new election requirements was greater than estimated. And so I think, in light of, and I've had a number of discussions with, like I said, members of our team, including the clerk, and I think we think that probably the better course of action is to hold off on the relocation of the clerk's office until after the November election. So I just wanted to let the board know, and I, there's a lot of background behind it. Like I said, it was a pretty lengthy iterative planning process amongst town staff. I know I had reported to the board that we were kind of in this process, but there are a lot of variables that when we made certain schedule decisions, seemed clear that, like I said, over time have become less clear because we just didn't know what that was going to look like, especially with the new election requirements. So like I said, I think discretion is the better part of valor in terms of making sure that the election is is conducted successfully, which I have every faith it will be, because I know the town clerk and her team are world class and have been putting in Herculean efforts to keep things moving along the way they have, with support of a lot of volunteers, including volunteers from the league. So I don't know if Kari, I can't see her on my screen, but if she's here and wants to.
It's here. Kari, would you like to make a comment? Don't need to, but I can see you, although I can't.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to just say that this is my 5th presidential cycle as a town clerk, and presidential election years are always very complicated, and COVID-19 has complicated them further. The legislation that was passed in July has very much, I think, offered an easier way for voters to stay safe while still being able to vote. It has created a lot more work for us, but we do have an amazing team to carry this out. We have early voting. In addition to voting by mail, we have early voting in person that started on Saturday. The voter registration deadlines were moved up to 10 days before both elections this fall. Early voting does finish up for the primary this Friday at noon, early voting in person. And I just want to say that I have an amazing staff, and we have wonderful election workers and many, many volunteers, and a very strong partnership with the League of Women Voters. And this team is dedicated to the electoral process, and together we will ensure a safe and fair election. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kari, and thanks to all of your team for the work they've done to ensure that we can complete this election cycle appropriately. Ms. Town Manager, do you have other items that you wanted to bring to our attention today?
I could open it to questions if anybody, if the board has questions on that.
Are there any questions from the board? I appreciate very much you dealing with this so swiftly. Being able to keep us on track here is greatly appreciated. I don't see any hands or questions, so I do now. Jane and then Terry. Jane?
I guess what this does is reminds me that, especially with a new town manager, sometimes the things that are more obvious to those of us who have lived in Concord for a long time just makes us a more important, perhaps, sounding board for things for decisions such as the internal relocation planning process to get, vetted informally. And I just want to make sure that I'm available to vetting and to be a resource going forward.
Terry?
I am just wanting to thank everybody. I want to thank the League for speaking up, and for Kari for being honest and saying, what's really on your mind. And I especially want to thank Stephen for being willing to listen to the community. And, when we have an election, we need a fair and accurate process, but we really need also the public perception. The public has to have the faith that it's going to be fair and accurate. So I have no doubt that Kari and her team could have done this on the moon if they had to. They're that good. But why make it that difficult for them? I'm so glad to hear that we're going to revisit the move, and everybody will relax now. So thanks to everybody.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So the next item on our agenda is my remarks. I have just a few. The first couple are just a heads up as to items that we're going to have on our agenda for our August 31st meeting next Monday. We're coming up on town meeting here within a few weeks, and at the conclusion of the town meeting, I will depart as a member of the select board. Matt Johnson, who I see on the Zoom meetings here with us today, will be sworn in and replace me here. So next week, we will address two issues. One, the first is liaison report. So as you know, usually directly after town meeting, the new incumbent select board tries to decide who's going to be the liaison for the various town committees. So I think we want to get that process going. So we'll pick that up as an agenda item next week, and we'll obviously ask, I will not participate. I mean, I'll listen, but I won't participate. We'll ask Matt to join us for that active conversation. And the second item is correspondence policy. We've been getting a lot of correspondence, and I think, frankly, I've handled the correspondence sort of unevenly, trying to get it all posted, but probably missing and trying to respond to everyone, at least with a polite thank you for writing, but probably missed. So I thought we should just revisit as an agenda item what our correspondence policy should be and how we should handle that. So I think that's a good item for us to have a good discussion on. And third, I should point out, first of all, that the town manager has now been here with us for 1 year and 12 days, if I recall. August 12th being the day we began his tenure with us. So it's time for the town manager's annual evaluation. And so for all three of these items, when we pick it up at our next meeting, I will turn the meeting over to Linda, the select board clerk, who will carry out and lead the discussion on these items. And I wanted to turn to her now to ask if she has any comments about, in particular, the town manager's annual evaluation. Linda?
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I would like to just say a little bit about that as we're looking forward. I think I'd like to propose that we use the same form, town manager form that we used 6 months ago, and that we'll ask each select board member to fill that out independently and submit that. I'm going to propose the date of September 4th. And while I realize this is an extremely busy time for all of us, I'd like to be able to include Mike's feedback since he has worked the closest with Steve in the year. In addition to that, I'm going to propose and will ask the town manager to prepare some material for us in terms of outlining some major accomplishments that he's been able to see his way through this year, in addition to challenges that he's faced, and more importantly, just to, in general, comment about his experience as first year in his role. What I intend to do is follow up with a summary of the process, send that out to each of you as select board members with the form, and we'll go from there. It's likely and I'll also stipulate that we'll probably ask each of you to return that independently to Jeremy, who will coordinate all of this, and then I will look at that and try to pull that all together for a subsequent meeting of the select board to discuss. Let me just say that that's likely not to occur until about September, what did I say? Certainly the first September meeting after town meeting, which I anticipate will probably be September 21 at this point. But I'll pull all this together in a memo for each of you.
Okay, so just thank you very much, Linda. So if I understood your remarks, so we don't need to have this on our agenda for our meeting on the 31st, is that correct?
Correct.
And so I sent you earlier today, I don't know if it was today, I sent you earlier the blank evaluation form. So you'll ensure that that gets distributed?
Right.
along with instructions to everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I won't put that on the agenda for the 31st, but I will put on the agenda then liaison assignments and our correspondence policy.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Susan,
Yeah, I just had a question for Linda. You mentioned something about September 4th. Is that?
That's a Friday.
Uh-huh.
And I was trying to look at our schedules this week in terms of everything that's on our plate right through Friday. Thought that we might have a window next week, and I'm trying to include Mike in this process while he's still with us. And yeah, so it sounds like you have questions about that.
Yeah, is that the deadline for us to submit the form? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's what I wasn't clear on. Okay.
Good. I'll send that all in an email to you.
great. Is there any other comments, Terry?
I have a question about the liaison reports. Liaison assignments, I guess is what it's going to be. Are we going to be making, or Linda, are you planning to make the assignments at that meeting or just talk about the process? I guess last year we maybe wrote down what we might prefer or, so what are we doing on the 31st?
To talk about the process going forward.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Jane?
And I just wanted to note that while we're talking about the 31st meeting, we also have a select board meeting on the 27th, correct?
We do.
So-
We have one
Right.
this
So there's-
Thursday.
Right.
But I think we had reserved that. We have a couple of agenda items. The primary one this Thursday is just to review our written statements that will accompany the material to be distributed at the annual town meeting. And so we can at least have one pass at looking at that together before we send them off.
I just didn't want to be confusing for anybody watching or.
No.
listening.
So we'll talk about liaisons and correspondence on our meeting Monday, August 31st.
Mike, is that meeting on Thursday, is that at 9 a.m. or 4 p.m.?
9 a.m. Should have. I think you should have got. I think. Wait, Lori.
Yeah.
Let me do.
Yeah, I did get it for 9 a.m., but I think,
Jeremy, are you with us? And am I speaking correctly?
Yeah, so I just haven't sent out the agenda yet, but I'm going to post it after this meeting and send it out to the board.
Okay, and the deadline actually for submitting your written commentary for material for annual town meeting is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. All right. Any additional comments? Seeing none, we'll turn to the next item on our agenda is parking meter enforcement through the remainder of the year. I was approached by folks in Concord Together about what our policy was going to be and if we were going to have our traditional, the last 2 or 3 years anyway, suspension of parking meter enforcement for the holiday period. And they were interested in knowing that this holiday period is going to be particularly important, I think, for our businesses in town here. And they wanted to be able to know as soon as they could so they could begin to develop their marketing material and advertising for that. So I wanted to get it on our agenda to talk about. And so it really has 2 parts. It's continuing the free parking because of the pandemic. Do we want to continue that and for how long? And then are we interested in instituting free parking for the holiday period as we have for the last couple of years? And I know, Stephen, you had indicated that the police chief was studying this a little bit, so maybe you could bring us up to speed on that.
Sure. So Chief O'Connor and I have been engaged in kind of in a discussion about parking enforcement. I think it's worked out well. We've gotten great feedback from the businesses about relaxing parking enforcement. But there is a budgetary impact because that revenue does pay for specific things like pavement markings. We have a contract with a company that maintains our parking meters that we have to pay whether or not the parking meters are being used or not. And so I've asked the chief to do an analysis of what the the revenue losses looked like so far and do some projections? And are there ways we can be targeted with the suspension of parking enforcement so we can at least make an informed decision with the understanding that we do know that it has been a benefit so far to the business community. We want to try and sustain that as long as possible, but I think it's incumbent upon us to know what is the cost to doing that.
Sure, of course. Very well. Well, let's postpone then, if you will allow me to postpone just further discussion on whether or not we want to continue the free parking that we instituted because of the pandemic. But what is your thinking about the annual holiday suspension of parking? Linda?
My own reaction is that that's been successful and I think well received in general by the business community. So if we can, I would like to continue that.
All right, Jane.
I can't imagine that given the fact that we have suspended it throughout the pandemic, why we would institute it now during the holidays, which is sort of, it would reverse our goals. So I'd be very supportive.
And Susan?
I would support any, as long as a suspension of parking fees that we could. The discussions that have been going on, and I'll report later in my liaison report, on the holiday season projection for the businesses in town, is that one of the real log jams is the number of people they can have in the store at one time. And I think to the extent that people can easily find a parking space and don't have to worry about that, it will help that, encouraging the local and regional citizens to shop in our stores.
Right. And Terry?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. And it might turn out to be simplest, even if we have a revenue loss, to just suspend all the way through the end of this 2020, or until we get a vaccine. Because I don't see, every time I go downtown, there are parking spaces. We're not having a problem with that. So businesses need help. Let's encourage customers. My question also is for Stephen and the chief when doing the analysis. I would like to know if, let's say the total revenue loss for the year is whatever. I would like to know what the pieces of that are, because my impression is, and I'm not sure, but the biggest piece is the contract for the meters. And then we have this other piece for curb markings. So I'd like to see a little breakdown, because I'm thinking ahead a few years even. Like, if I don't know how long this contract is, and whether we want to continue it indefinitely, or just maybe we'll forgo the loss. I want to see that breakdown so we can look at our options going forward, if we can do that.
Thank you, Matt.
I just would like to say that my support's more qualified, and that's just simply because I assume that the parking meter's objective is not so much for raising revenue, but for helping to assure that parking is available by, preventing those that would just hog the spot, if you will, from just staying there. Yeah. And so I really would defer to the business community, but also to patterns that we're seeing to make sure that there isn't abuse, and that indeed spots are available because there's turnover in those spots for commercial use.
The fees for parking meter is a constrained fund. It doesn't go into the general fund. It's used to pay for the service, to pay for members of the police department to empty the meters, and as Stephen indicated, it can be used for road markings. So I'm sure we'll see when we get that report from the chief, the various costs associated within the revenues. So again, I think since the chief is working on this, it would be appropriate and fair to wait on the decision about lack of enforcement continuing until we get that report. It will continue until the select board decides it's not going to continue. But I would be interested, since everyone was supporting it, in putting a motion on our agenda for our next meeting on the 31st to suspend parking meter enforcement for the holiday period as we have in the last few years. So is there objection to that? Seeing none, then I'll ask Jeremy to put that on for it, and we'll pick up the broader issue of continuing the current practice of not enforcing meters after we receive the report from the chief. Any other comments? All right, next item on our agenda is the library agreement. I want to thank town council for his thorough review of this document, and after he reviewed it, he made a very large number of comments. I don't think any of them would be regarded as substantive. I forwarded all those agreements to our friends on the Library Corporation, Mario and Sherry, who have been working with us. They saw no problem with all of them and made an additional suggestion. And I have distributed that agreement to the select board. And I heard back from one member of the select board who proposed a couple of additional, I would say they are editorial changes, but Jane submitted that to me today. So where are we on this? I don't, personally, I don't see any problem at all accepting all of the items that were redlined in the version of the agreement that I sent along to you. And if you want, I can go over with you, if you have your copy of it with you, just for pointing out to you the two changes that Jane suggested. One was just changing the tense of word. And so I know that's perfectly not a problem. And the other was, Jane, do you want to talk about it, or would you like me to?
Hang on, let me pull it up.
It had to do with the section of the agreement where there's a discussion about use of funds.
Yes, hang on. And use of funds. Sorry, I should have had this teed up and I didn't.
Well, I can do it. Section 9, page 9.
Yep.
It's the paragraph that begins library expenses. And the current version of that I distributed and is posted with part of our meeting material is, it reads, starts with the second sentence. Library expenses to be paid for by the corporation shall be funded out of gifts and bequests made to the corporation. And then says, comma, investment income, annual giving, or capital contributions as determined by the corporation. Jane suggests adding after the word corporation, including. So she's just enumerating investment income, annual giving, capital contributions. And then the second part of her suggestion is in the very last words of the sentence. It says, as determined by the corporation, and any other funds which may, just adding the word which.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think I view those as just making the document a little bit better. It certainly doesn't change the substance of anything. And I'll first turn for comments on that to the select board, and after I've heard those comments, I'll turn to Sherry and Mario to see if they have any concerns about either of those proposed changes. Okay.
I had one question, which is, you mentioned that that Mario and Sherry had added one comment to the changes in the agreement. And that I wasn't sure which, I don't disagree with it. I don't know which of the changes was theirs.
I didn't say it correctly. And I agreed. One of the suggestions made by Mina, we all agreed just wasn't necessary. And so that was just really sort of rejecting that. So it wasn't even included in the document that I sent to you. So other comments on Jane's suggestions? Linda?
Not on Jane's suggestion so much as on just one typo, and then I have a couple substantive comments to make. On page 9, the word accrue was misspelled. That's just a typo.
I corrected that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good. But here's my real comments. I realize that Mina's had a chance to look at this. Can you say just a little bit more about the response we received to MAF party's comments and the library committee's question about that?
We changed the language in the document. Mina's point, I think, was that as long as the library director was working on behalf of the library, she was allowed to help and facilitate the corporation. The line that had to be drawn was in direct fundraising. And so I think that was consistent with other findings of a similar nature. So the language in the document was changed to reflect that from Mina.
And then just as a follow-up to that, I at least haven't seen the director's job description, but will that somehow be reflected and clarified in the job description if it isn't already clear?
Help me understand what you mean by that.
Because
the duties of the library director are, I believe, articulated in the document beginning on page 4.
they are. So let me just word this a little differently then. Is that list exhaustive? And in terms of how it compares to the job description? I guess that's my question.
No, it says including but not limited to. And I don't know how that lines up with the job description specifically, but I think we wanted to enumerate the job duties that specifically support the corporation. But there may be duties that are just, regular town stuff that may come along with it as well that don't relate directly to the corporation. I'm sure we could track down the job description if you want to see comparison, but those are really just the duties that are specific for the purpose of the agreement.
Yeah, the only reason I raise it is so that there is congruence between that job description and the changes that have been made in the agreement along the lines that Mike just specified in terms of as long as her work is supporting the library, it stops at the direct fundraising. So that there's no ambiguity there, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the board? Terry? You're muted. You're still muted.
Sorry about that. I was looking at the document and I have to go back to the document. Well, I probably remember it. In section 4, I found one small typo just now.
Where is that?
It's in a change that says, instead of it saying the library director, it says libraries director.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
No, I've corrected that.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
Great.
All right, let me turn to Sherry and Mario. Mario and Sherry, is there any concern or objection to the two changes that Jane had suggested? I can't believe that there is, but I see your heads nodding, but you're both muted.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with them. They're fine.
Yeah, good, thank you. Sherry? Right, you're muted, but I can take.
Yeah.
Your head.
Those changes seem fine to me as well.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so with these changes, are we ready to proceed to a vote? Then I think we are. Madam Clerk, I would entertain a motion.
Okay. Move to approve the proposed changes to the library agreement as presented at this meeting.
As presented and collected at this meeting, and you need to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement.
You want that all in the same motion, Mike, as opposed to two separate ones?
I think so, yes, please.
Okay. So let me start over again. Move to approve the proposed changes to the library agreement as presented and collected at this meeting, and to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the town.
Good, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Who said that?
I did.
Okay, Terry, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Thank you, and I know it passes unanimously, and let me thank Sherry and Mario and Stephen and all of the folks who wrote to us and commented on this to allow us to make the kind of changes that I think would make this a stronger and better agreement, so we can continue to have the kind of cooperation between the library and the corporation and the town that the town needs and deserves. So thank you all very much. It's greatly appreciated. The next item on our agenda is election officer appointments. Is there any discussion or concern about this that we need to hear about? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, I would entertain a motion.
Move to appoint the election officers as listed in the memo date August 23rd, 2020, from Town Clerk Kari Kari to the Select Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Thank you, and I note that it passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is committee nominations. Madam Clerk?
Move to appoint Carl Packard of 86 Butternut Circle to the Capital Planning Task Force for a term to expire June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, would the clerk please call, oh, excuse me, we don't need, sorry, that's my error. We don't need seconds or approvals of nomination. We will take Mr. Packer's nomination up as an appointment at our next meeting. Next item on our agenda is committee liaison reports. So who would like to begin? Susan.
Hi, the only meeting I'm going to report on is the Economic Vitality Committee, which met on the 19th. They reported on several events that have been very successful. The sidewalk sale, Beth Williams said that she got reports from vendors in Concord Center and West Concord, and they both said there was good traffic. People were social distancing appropriately. The other success was the summer solstice Shop Concord tickets that we had and got signed by local businesses. Beth said that she counted up, or someone in her staff counted up how many different businesses were represented, and it was 92, which was really great. I wish I could remember how many entries there were. I can't remember that number. I'm sorry. There's a possibility for a third drive-in movie that they're working on. And the CMLP has offered a 50% rebate up to $1,000 in electric rates for outdoor lanterns, heaters, if businesses such as restaurants and others want to extend their outdoor dining time, that's an option that's available, and Stephen is available as a resource to if people want to call about that.
Susan, sorry,
Yeah.
it's at the purchase price, not the rate.
Oh, it is.
A rebate on the up to 50% up to $1,000 on the purchase price. Sorry,
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Thanks.
sorry.
Well, thank you for the clarification. I thought, gee, you have to spend a lot of money to rack up a $1,000 electric bill. But, okay, there was a survey that was done. There were 38 responses, and there were a lot of questions and comments about it. 44% of the businesses said that the efforts that have been done by Concord Together, the economic vitality in the town, have helped their businesses. And 38% said the summer solstice program had helped. Since reopening, there was a question about, how are you doing since reopening? A lot of people said they were okay. They were cautious. They were ahead of where they thought they'd be. They were doing okay, but there were 16%, which I guess, let me see, was that 4? Who said they were worried the business was worse or much worse. And that 4 businesses, that's where that number came from, had already decided to retire / close. And this is an anonymous survey, so the suspicion is that they aren't the 4 businesses that have already closed. So there's concern about that. The summer solstice program was so successful, it's going to be continued in the fall as a Fall in Love with Concord promotion. One of the big news from Concord Together, as you know, they established a fund with the community chest to aid small businesses. The person at the community chest said somebody walked into the office and their goal was $100,000. Asked how much it would take to meet that goal, and wrote a check for $25,000, an anonymous donor. And then in addition, the Rasmussens had issued a challenge saying that they would match dollar for dollar if the fund reached $100,000. It did, and so now there's $200,000 in this fund. And please spread the word to people that local businesses that you shop at in town, that there are $2,500 grants available through the community chest, and encourage people to apply for them. So they're very grateful for all the work that went into this, establishing this fund, and of course the generous contributions that I just mentioned. They're trying. There's the town manager and Stephen, you could probably talk about this. They're trying to figure out how to do something more with funds to help businesses, but it's very complicated, and there's certainly nothing going to happen in town meeting this year. But that's something that's on the future calendar.
Yeah, we have been. Sorry, go ahead, Susan.
Sure. No, go ahead.
So if I could make 2 points on that. The first is we have talked to town council about what would a warrant article like that look like. And so, I think it would probably call for a special town meeting, and I have not talked to the moderator about that. And so that's a conversation that needs to happen. The other part of this, and this is sort of meant as a plug for the small businesses. One of the slides showed, asked what would it take to get you back to pre-COVID-19 levels. And some of the businesses said we're already there. And then another group of businesses said 10 to 15%. And those 2 groups amounted for more than half of the businesses who participated in the survey. And so I think if we, now of course it's lining up with which are the right businesses that only need 10 to 15%. But I think if we looked at it in terms of, let's just strive for 10% next month, and then strive for 15% next month in terms of patronizing local businesses, you could really move the needle for I think the majority of them. And that's, it is a daunting task, but sometimes when something is daunting, you have to break it down into more bite-sized manageable pieces. So that's where I think one of the things where I think people support is not wasted for small businesses. A little bit of improvement will go a long way for many of them.
Thank you.
Annette, just a couple more points. Concord Together was thinking about doing lawn signs that say something like invest in Concord, support our local businesses, and that's in the works. But the other sort of major project that will be happening is doing something electronically. The town website is one resource. Any business can have a free listing on the tourism website. There also could be another website, but some way to have a kind of virtual Concord shopping experience, which may be as simple as clicking through to the online site for the particular business or more. But that's going to be a major effort in the fall to augment business for people given the physical constraints of shopping. That's it. Thank you.
Susan, who would like to go next? Jane?
I was going to jump in because some of mine dovetails somewhat on Susan's. Three of my committees met, those being the Board of Health, the Board of Health, the Ag Committee, and the Historic Districts Committee. But the Ag Committee in particular, while I'm hoping that on Thursday we hear something concrete from Happy in terms of the plans of at least 8 of the town's farmers are planning for Ag Week, the week leading up to town meeting. And this seems like something that Concord Together and the small businesses should be supporting in terms of not just information flow, but in terms of any kind of promotions. And I don't know whether it makes sense to have a different ticket form of how many farms have you visited? Not unlike the Summer Solstice Challenge. But there will be a different event held at every farm in Concord that's participating. So for instance, one day that week, or maybe 2 days that week, Barrett's Mill is going to have free flower picking with COVID restrictions, i.e. reserve in advance your time frame. Another farm is thinking about doing pick your own pumpkins. Another one is doing pumpkin designs. I mean, and I can keep, these are all still in the works, but again, it sort of follows well from the report from the Economic Vitality Committee. On the Board of Health.
I just wanted to comment on that. A couple of weeks ago, I think Happy was at the Economic Vitality meeting, and Jennifer Schooneman, who was chairing that week, encouraged her to tell the Economic Vitality Committee what help they could provide. So I know they're willing to publicize or help out in any way they can.
And I'm sure they are.
I've asked her to, she was at the chair's breakfast, and I asked her to please come to a select board meeting as soon as she was capable, so that she could lay it out in some detail for us and ask what we could do to help. So go ahead, Jane.
Right. I was going to say, I think that of all of the committees that probably are challenged by time and focus to make Zoom and the new virtual reality an easy space, I think the Ag Committee is not always the easiest space to get those things accomplished in. And so I will keep helping Happy in any way, shape, or form I can to get that organized.
Thank you.
The Board of Health met last Tuesday, discussing some sign off on some of the septic on the project at 1440 Main Street, across the street, catty corner to where I live. And then also just had a discussion on where we are with COVID-19, and including, you know, how we're enforcing this. I bring it up in that segue because while it wasn't on the Board of Health's agenda, we've received emails about the lack of the concern about enforcement of social distancing and mask usages by the construction crew at that project. It was not on the Board of Health's on their agenda. There's no reason that it would have been, but it is one of those points of enforcement that the town needs to think about. And then there was also a discussion about the track where we're going with tobacco control and the introduction of regional tobacco control collaborative staff member, Aaron Murphy, to the team. So that's going to be very useful. And the board appointment as a special agent to the Board of Health for compliance. And then finally, the HDC met, and that was a relatively standard meeting with the addition of a discussion about both Jenny Dugan as a potential new historic district, not for this year, but for the future town meeting, and also sort of the bringing up to speed of some of the warrant articles that are on this town meeting to the newest member of the HGC. So.
Thank you very much. Terry?
Yeah, I have a question for Jane or Stephen on the construction. I saw some of those emails, and how does the enforcement work for construction teams? And maybe just questions for Stephen, like which departments enforce it? How is it done? Do we have a process?
Well, I mean, I believe that they're required to, and this is really not just for construction, it's for everything. The Commonwealth guidelines, and they have by and large left it to self-policing.
Yeah.
But we certainly, and I'm sure the contractor had to submit a COVID-19 plan to resume work that they're supposed to be following. So I can certainly have the engineering department, who usually oversees construction projects that are done on behalf of the town, check in on that.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Terry or Linda, go ahead, Terry.
Well, mine dovetails also with Susan's. I did attend the, the Saturday shopping day. I forget, sidewalk sale, that's it. Sorry about that. Yeah, sidewalk sale, I attended both in the downtown and West Concord. And there was a lot of creativity of businesses, the way they displayed their wares outdoors. And people were very happy to see that. So that was great. And again, I had no trouble parking too. So that was also great. And then I took a walk over to Estabrook, and I just want to report that everything was very quiet. There were no dogs, no hikers. I was the only one there. It was beautiful. So that was nice. And the meeting that I attended this week was the Board of Assessors. I have two announcements about that. One is that property values came in this year very, very strong, stronger than people expected. But the inventory is low. So after some discussion, there's still so much uncertainty. So the board decided they're going to keep the values the same for now. And if this trend repeats, then they'll take a look at upping them. But that was good news generally. And then they reviewed the article. I don't have the number of the article with me. It's the one on the senior means tested exemption.
15.
15, okay. And as you know, it's on the consent calendar. And they just reviewed all the different steps that this vote would be that the town meeting will tweak the formula and make the legislation permanent, so it won't have a sunset clause anymore. And then after the legislature approves, well, after town meeting approves, then the legislature approves. Then town meeting has to vote again after that and go to the ballot. So we're in step 1 of 4.
What committee meeting was this, Terry?
The Board of Assessors.
Let me just tell you before, since there's an update since that meeting, and that is that there are really 2 changes to Article 15. One is the one you mentioned, which is eliminating essentially the sunset clause at the end of it. The other is a change in the way income is going to be calculated by the assessor. And because of that language and review with town council, the moderator has decided that that needs to come off the consent calendar. So she has made that determination, and it will be dealt with in numerical order like any of the others. No change to the article as you're reporting it, but it's no longer going to be on the consent calendar.
Okay, thanks for that. So it was good to have the Board of Assessors understand these changes, especially the part about the calculation for income. You know, they went into some detail on that, about the administrative work. If we don't change it versus this new way with income, that's going to make it better. Everybody's on board now with that. And we just need to explain to the town, though, again, that this is going to be step 1, but once of 4. But once we get through it all, if it goes through all 4 steps, we don't have to do it every 2 years anymore. It will be permanent.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Linda?
Yeah, well, like all of us, we were at all the public hearings last week. But I also attended the chair's meeting, and I just want to mention that the members there acknowledged Mike for his leadership and for all the work that he's done with the committees over the years. So that was nice to see.
Yeah, it was nice. Thank you. I attended, as Linda just mentioned, the Chair's Breakfast. Always a wonderful meeting because you learn so much about what's going on. And we had 3 public hearings and 3 extra select board meetings this week. And I want to thank the planning board and the finance committee for the way they conducted their public hearings. I thought it was very well done. And I want to call out especially the finance committee and its leadership, because after all of these public hearings, the finance committee had to very, very quickly complete its finance committee report so that it could go to the printer today, so that it could be back in time to be distributed to us as voters in Concord before the annual town meeting. So to Dean Banfield and Mary Hartman, I greatly appreciate all the work you did. And I would also call out Christopher Gromedy from the town manager's office who participated in that, and of course the town moderator. I also attended the Concord Municipal Light Plant meeting, where very full agenda. And the main item that they spent quite a long time on is the cost of service and rate design coming up. And so that, of course, is going to be an ongoing discussion where they had a consultant in. So it was a very effective meeting. So that ends our liaison reports. We had a number of pieces of miscellaneous correspondence which were attached to the packet. And yeah, sorry, Stephen, I didn't see your hand.
And sorry, I just want to, on the Finance Committee report, I did want to acknowledge Carrie LaFleur and her team for the work that they put in as well. I know you meant to, but I just wanted to make sure that they get acknowledged.
Thank you very much for collecting that for me. So we did have a lot of communication attached to the packet, and we'll be discussing our policy about that at our next meeting. So the next item on our agenda is public comments. So if you have a comment that you want to make, unmute yourself and say your name, and I'm happy to recognize you. I can only see 25 of the 31 people on my screen. So if I I don't see anyone raising their hand. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
The clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman? Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Would Ms. Ackerman unmute herself and say aye?
Aye, sorry about that.
Thank
I
you.
read your lips, however. Bye.
Passes unanimously. So we are adjourned. I thank all of you for attending and please stay well.